Lady Ruth Louis had learned how to disappear without leaving the room. She stood in the far corner of the Piton ballroom, her back straight, her hands folded neatly before her, dressed head to toe in black silk that drank in the candlelight instead of reflecting it. Around her the room glittered, chandeliers burned bright. Music floated through the air, laughter rose and fell like waves. Yet none of it belonged to her. For 3 years this corner had been her place, not by accident, by command. Her father had ordered it after the scandal. Black dresses, severe hair, no smiles that could be mistaken for joy, no dancing, no standing where she might be noticed. She was to attend society events only to remind others what happened to women who lost their reputations, a living mourning dressed in mourning for something that had never died. Ruth was 28. Once she had been considered beautiful. Once she had been admired. Now she was tolerated. "Poor Lady Ruth Louis," a young woman whispered nearby, not bothering to lower her voice. "Still wearing black after all this time." "She should be grateful she's invited at all," another replied. "If I were ruined like that, I'd never show my face again." Ruth did not turn. She had learned that stillness was her shield. Her face remained calm, her breathing slow. If she reacted, they won. If she showed pain, it became entertainment. 3 years ago, she had been engaged to Viscount Edmund Hartley. The wedding had been planned, the invitations sent, the church prepared. Then, one morning, everything collapsed. A letter, accusations, servants willing to swear lies, and Edmund standing before her with a face full of disgust, telling her he could not marry a woman of such character. She had begged. She had sworn innocence. It had not mattered. By nightfall, all of London knew. By morning, she was ruined. Since then, she had lived at the edges of rooms like this, watching life happen to others. Her eyes drifted across the ballroom now, detached, observant. Mothers guided daughters like chess pieces. Gentlemen assessed fortunes and faces. The dance floor was full of hope, ambition, and calculation. Ruth felt none of it. Then the music faltered. Conversation slowed, then stopped entirely. A hush fell over the room, so sudden it felt like a hand closing around every throat. Ruth frowned slightly and lifted her gaze. The footman's voice rang out, sharp and formal. "His Grace the Duke of Ashford." A ripple passed through the crowd. Gasps. Whispers. Startled movements. The Duke of Ashford had not attended a ball in 2 years. Since the death of his wife. Since grief had turned him into a legend of cold silence and absence. Ruth had heard the stories. Everyone had. A war hero. A man carved from discipline. A widower who had vanished from society after losing his young duchess in childbirth. Some said he was broken. Others said he was dangerous. The crowd parted as he entered. Ruth saw him clearly then. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark evening clothes that fit him like armor. His hair was cut shorter than fashion required. His posture was rigid, precise, the stance of a man used to command. His face was severe, handsome in a way that allowed no softness. But it was his eyes that held the room, cold gray, unyielding, watchful. They swept across the ballroom like a general surveying a battlefield. People shifted under that gaze. Mothers drew daughters back. Gentlemen straightened instinctively. The Duke acknowledged no one. He did not bow. He did not smile. He walked forward. At first, Ruth assumed he was heading for the terrace door behind her corner. She prepared to step aside. But she did not move fast enough. Because he was not walking past her. He was walking toward her. Her heart slammed painfully against her ribs. This was absurd. Impossible. The Duke of Ashford did not approach ruined women in corners, yet he stopped directly in front of her. Up close, he was even more imposing. He blocked the light, the sound, the world behind him. Ruth had to tilt her head to meet his gaze. The silence was complete. Then he spoke. Lady Ruth Louis. Her name, spoken in his deep, clipped voice, cut through her like steel. He extended his hand. "You will dance with me." The room seemed to inhale and forget how to exhale. Ruth stared at his hand as if it belonged to someone else. Surely this was a mistake, a misunderstanding, a cruel joke. Your Grace, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper, there must be some error. There is none. His tone did not rise. It did not soften. It simply was. I do not dance, she said quickly. I am in mourning. One dark eyebrow lifted slightly. Mourning for what? He asked. Your dignity, your reputation, or the woman you were told you could no longer be. The words struck deeper than she expected. Deeper, because they were true. Ruth swallowed. Every eye in the ballroom burned against her skin. If she refused him, she would offend a duke. If she accepted, she would invite cruelty and gossip beyond anything she had endured before. Her hand trembled as she placed it in his. His grip closed around her fingers, firm and certain. He led her onto the dance floor without another word. The orchestra, stunned, scrambled to play. The waltz began. They were the only couple dancing. The Duke moved with absolute control, guiding her steps as if he had done so 1,000 times. Ruth's body remembered what her mind wanted to forget. She followed, breath shallow, heart racing. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Let them stare," he replied calmly. "I have faced enemy artillery. I can endure gossip." "I cannot," she said. "You do not understand what this will cost me." For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not warmth, recognition. "And you do not understand what it cost me to walk into that room." They danced in silence after that, two isolated figures moving together beneath 1,000 watching eyes. When the music ended, he released her waist, but not her hand. He bowed. She curtsied automatically. Then he leaned closer. His voice meant only for her. "Tomorrow, Hyde Park, the Serpentine. 3 o'clock, I will expect you." He let go, turned, and walked out of the ballroom. Ruth stood alone at the center of the floor. The whispers began instantly. Her mother seized her arm moments later, furious and frightened. "We are leaving," Lady Constance hissed. But Ruth barely heard her. Tomorrow, Hyde Park. For the first time in 3 years, someone had not looked at her like a warning, and she did not know whether that terrified her more than the corner ever had. The carriage ride home felt longer than usual. Ruth sat rigidly on the velvet seat, her gloved hands clasped in her lap, staring at nothing while London rolled past the window. Her mother sat opposite her, lips pressed thin, eyes sharp with anger and fear. Beside her, Ruth's younger sister Beatrice shifted uncomfortably, curiosity battling caution. "What did you say to him?" Lady Constance demanded at last. "What encouraged the Duke of Ashford to make a spectacle of you?" "I said nothing," Ruth answered quietly. "He came to me." "That is impossible," her mother snapped. "Men like him do not notice women like you without reason." Ruth did not argue. She had learned that truth did not always matter to those who had already decided the story. At home, Ruth was dismissed to her room like a child who had misbehaved. She sat at her dressing table long after Sarah finished unlacing her gown. When the maid finally left, Ruth reached up and slowly pulled the pins from her hair. Her dark auburn hair fell around her shoulders, heavy and loose. She barely recognized herself. The woman in the mirror looked older than 28, but also sharper, harder, like someone shaped by storms. The Duke's words echoed in her mind, "Mourning for the woman you might have been." A knock came at the door. Her father's voice followed. "Ruth, my study." Now, Lord William Louis did not invite her to sit. He stood behind his desk, hands braced on the wood as if restraining himself. "You embarrassed this family tonight," he said. "Do you understand the damage you have caused?" "I did not seek him out," Ruth replied evenly. "I did nothing. That does not matter. What matters is that people will talk again, and this time, they will be louder."
He studied her, calculating.
"You will go to Hyde Park tomorrow." Ruth's breath caught. "Father, if the Duke of Ashford has taken an interest, we will not waste it," he continued. "You will be agreeable, respectful. You will not shame us further. And if I refuse?" His eyes hardened. "Then you will return to your corner and remain there for the rest of your life." Ruth understood then. She had never truly had a choice. The next afternoon, Hyde Park shimmered under pale sunlight. Carriages lined the paths. Ladies strolled with parasols. Gentlemen rode horses at an easy pace. Everyone was there to be seen. Ruth walked toward the Serpentine with steady steps, her black dress suddenly feeling heavier than ever. Eyes followed her. Whispers stirred, and there he was. The Duke of Ashford stood by the water, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the rippling surface as if it held answers. He turned as she approached. "You came," he said. "You said you expected me." That was not a command. She lifted her chin. It sounded like "one." For the briefest moment, something close to amusement crossed his face. "Walk with me." They moved along the water's edge in silence. Ducks glided across the surface. Children laughed somewhere behind them. "I will ask you a direct question," the Duke said at last. "I expect an honest answer." Ruth nodded. "Did you do what they accused you of 3 years ago?" She stopped walking. "No," she said clearly. "I did not." He studied her face with unsettling focus. "Then why did you accept your punishment?" "Because innocence requires proof," Ruth replied, "and guilt requires only rumor." The Duke exhaled slowly, as if something had settled into place. "I require a wife," he said abruptly. Ruth blinked. "Your Grace, my father's will demands an heir." He continued, voice calm and cold. "Time is no longer generous. I will not marry a woman who expects romance or devotion." Ruth felt the words land like stones. "You want someone already broken," she said. "No," he corrected. "I want someone already tested." He stopped and faced her fully. "I offer you a marriage of purpose, protection, position, freedom from that corner." "And in return," she asked, "you will bear my heir," he said plainly, "and you will ask nothing of my heart." Ruth's hands curled into fists. "And if I refuse, then you return to the life you know." He paused. "You have 3 days to decide." That night, Ruth received the first letter. No signature. Crimson wax. "Return to the shadows where you belong." Her blood ran cold. The next morning, her former friend Beatrice Thornton confirmed what Ruth had long suspected. It was Miranda Hartley," Beatrice admitted. "She destroyed you." She was obsessed with the Duke even then. The pieces began to align. Meanwhile, at Ashford House, the Duke confronted his brother Edmund, newly returned from abroad, nervous, polished, smiling too easily. The mention of Catherine's name drained the color from Edmund's face. Something was wrong. By evening, Ruth received another letter. "If you marry him, I will destroy you both." The same crimson seal. The Duke arrived at Ruth's home the next morning. "I am revising my proposal," he said once they were alone. "We are being threatened by the same enemy." He spoke of his brother, of unanswered questions, of his wife's death. "I propose an alliance," he said. "We marry." And we uncovered the truth together. Ruth looked at him. Truly looked. Not a rescuer, not a tyrant, a man tired of ghosts. "I accept," she said. Outside, London whispered. Inside, war had been declared. The days leading to the wedding passed like a storm gathering strength. London whispered without pause. Some said the Duke had lost his mind. Others said Lady Ruth Louis had bewitched him. Old rumors were dragged from their graves and dressed in new cruelty. Invitations arrived only to be withdrawn. Smiles were given with tight mouths and colder eyes. Ruth endured it all in silence. But this time, she did not stand in a corner. She stood beside the Duke of Ashford. On the third evening after their engagement was announced, a letter arrived at Ashford House. Crimson wax. Ruth recognized it instantly. George read it without comment. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened. "She wants us to call off the wedding," he said. "Or she will expose my wife's death as suicide." Ruth inhaled slowly. "Then we take her weapon away." Colonel Whitfield returned from Brighton the next night with the physician who had attended the Duchess Catherine. The man was pale and shaking, his guilt worn openly on his face. She took her own life, the doctor confessed. She was with child, and the Duke's brother paid me to hide the truth. Silence followed. The truth was heavier than Ruth expected. She saw the pain carve deeper lines into George's face, but he did not look away. She left a letter, the doctor continued, naming Edmund. The decision was made that night. The truth would no longer hide in shadows. Lady Piton's ball was crowded beyond expectation. No one wanted to miss the spectacle of the Duke and his scandalous bride appearing together. Ruth entered on George's arm wearing deep midnight blue. Almost black, but not quite. The color of transition. Eyes followed her. Whispers rose. George waited until the music stopped. Then he spoke. "My wife did not die in childbirth," he said clearly. "She took her own life after being violated in her own home." Gasps filled the room. "My brother committed that crime. Edmund tried to flee. He did not succeed. Under the weight of witnesses and truth, he broke. His confession spilled out in sobs and desperation. The physician confirmed every word. The room reeled. Then Miranda Hartley stepped forward, fury twisting her beauty into something sharp and ugly. "You failed her," she accused George, "and now you marry another broken woman to soothe your guilt." Ruth stepped forward before George could speak. "You destroyed me," she said calmly. "You forged lies. You paid for my ruin. And when I survived, you tried again." George produced the letters. Miranda's composure shattered. She was removed from the ballroom in disgrace. Silence followed. Then applause, slow at first, then certain. The truth had won. The wedding took place 2 days later. Ruth walked down the aisle in ivory silk, her hair woven with white roses. She did not wear black. She did not bow her head. George watched her approach with an expression that held fear, awe, and something dangerously close to love. When Miranda burst into the church screaming objections, George answered without hesitation. "I choose Ruth," he said, "not as a replacement, not as a consolation, but as my equal." The word settled into Ruth's bones like warmth after winter. They were married before noon. At the wedding breakfast, George took Ruth aside. "I love you," he said simply. "I did not plan to, but it is true." Ruth smiled, eyes bright. "So do I." The months that followed reshaped them both. Edmund was sent away in disgrace. Miranda vanished from society. Catherine's memory was honored without being allowed to haunt the present. Ruth replaced black with color. She became a duchess not by title alone, but by presence. She spoke. She acted. She helped women who had been silenced as she once had been. George learned to live again. When Ruth placed his hand over her stomach one winter morning and told him they were expecting a child, he trembled with fear and joy in equal measure. "She will survive," Ruth told him firmly, "and so will I." She did. A daughter was born healthy and strong. They named her Catherine Ruth. 1 year later, Ruth descended the ballroom staircase in crimson silk, no longer a warning, no longer invisible. A young woman in gray approached her that night. "They told me to sit in corners," the girl whispered. "They said my story was over." Ruth smiled gently. "It isn't," she said. "It never is." Across the room, George extended his hand. "Dance with me," he said. This time it was not a command. This time it was a choice.